just maybe a story or remembrance about day that they've got that would just be uplifting and encouraging. I really think it was good that everybody could be here today. This is probably the most unusual funeral type service that I've participated in. But it's what Dave requested when he was in the hospital. Really, he's only been there about 2 or 3 days, but I think he sensed that his days were numbered. And he said, if I die, I don't want any funeral. He said, I want you to have, he said, I know you're going to think this is weird, but I want you to have a party at my house. And he was telling me all the things he wanted to do and different things, and invite the neighbors and invite people he worked with. And so a lot of people have been here today. It's been good. And I think it's been nice that we could all get together. I know a lot. I don't know who traveled the furthest. Scarf, how far are you from home?
About 1,000 miles.
1,000 miles. You might get the furthest trip. How far is Mississippi?
It's only 7 hours.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. I traveled the least. Well, actually, Tim traveled the least. But I think it was good that we could be here today. But I'm going to ask Beth, the only niece of the generation, to begin and share with us what she would have us to hear today. I'm going to move out of the way and get a chair. And then we'll let Eric to say, no, you sit there. I'm going to go over there by Kim. And then and if anybody does have anything they want to share, I think that's good. But again, I just want to say thank you for everyone for being here. And thank you for all the ones that did work to help get Dave's house ready for this day. It was a good job and well done. I think we had a good time working. I know it was lots to do, but I think you'd be happy with how it was. Everything got cleaned up and put out. But Beth, thank you for saying yes to my request.
Thank you. I think that's how that worked. So I think we've done the part that Uncle Dave wanted us to do. We just hung out and was that louder or higher?
Higher. Up, so
I really don't want to stand
we
there.
know where the voice is.
I feel like we've done what Dave asked us to do in the first 3 hours that we've been here and had our little tailgate party, as George was saying. But I think that to do what we're doing right now is for us. I feel like that was kind of for him and to honor his request. But we've lost somebody really important to us for a lot of different reasons. And I think that we would leave a bit of a void if we didn't take a little bit of time to talk about it and observe it and remember the blessing that this man was. I had to write a few things down because I didn't trust my brain to remember them. So I'm going to read a little bit, if not all of it. This is what I think about my uncle. My Uncle Dave was a complicated man. From my perspective as his one and only and favorite niece, therefore, he embodied all of the things that you would want in a stereotypical doting uncle. And I know that's not just true for me as the niece. I know the nephew's got that as well. I remember when I was right out of high school, I was working for my dad as his horrible secretary. I don't know how I didn't bring this whole business down. But I used to write these, I had an IBM Selectric typewriter in Dad's office, and there wasn't always a lot of work to do, and I would type these long, long letters to Dave, and Jeff was around at that time, and they would write back, Dave would write back. He would write these long, long letters back to, I don't know how or what he would tell me, except as always, he was encouraging, he was affirming, he was always really funny. And as years went by, he went out of his way to always express his love for me and for my family. He always asked about my kids. He celebrated their accomplishments. He never had anything negative to say about my children. He liked to gossip, yes. But when he was talking to you, he would never say anything negative about you or your family. And when we talked, he would always listen. He was the kind of person who would ask you a question, and then he would shut his mouth and he would listen to what you had to say, and he would react to it. He always heard me. And that's not complicated. It doesn't make him a complicated man. In the context of our relationship, he was kind and loving and funny and a wonderful uncle. And he has known me my entire life. And I always had a sense when I talked to him that he held that he knew me before I existed. And that was really important to me. But sometimes family relationships, they can give you kind of a tunnel vision. And I think that was true when I came to Uncle Dave. I really didn't know much about the reality of his life outside of the context that he was my wonderful uncle. And it was only until relatively recently, actually, that I began to understand and hear about some of the significant challenges that he had faced in his life. And he began to talk to me about some of those things, and he would struggle to understand and try to put some things in place. I think he would call me sometimes for therapy, and I think Joey kind of uncorked that for him when Joe spent a lot of time at his bedside and listening to Uncle Dave finally kind of open up and tell a lot of his story. And Dave would call and he would talk to me about things that had happened way back in his childhood, and he'd say, I don't know, Bethy. He always called me Bethy. Bethy, I don't know. I just don't know what to think about that. And we'd think for a minute, and he'd say, well, enough about that. Okay, now let's, and we would just kind of move on to something else. We never dwelt too long on the difficult stuff. But he started to share more and more with me as his life went on, and it only made me love him more, because he quit just being awesome in my eyes because he was always awesome to me, but awesome because he was a real flesh and blood mortal human being who was trying his very best to figure life out with the support and kindness of a wonderful family around him. We all know that Dave wasn't really a profoundly religious man, but he was a profoundly good and decent man. And he was funny and kind and generous, and he loved me, he loved us. He loved all of us so well. He loved his family, and I can't help but think that in all of that love, whether he would call himself religious or not, he represented the very best of what Jesus, a great teacher, told us and called us to do. In the Bible, Jesus is talking to his closest friends in the book of John, chapter 13. Jesus' friends are gathered around him, and he's getting ready to leave them. He's getting ready to die. And they don't really understand what's happening, but he looks his friends in the eyes, and one of the last things he says to them before he's gone is he looks at them and he says, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. I don't know about his friends and his neighbors, but I know this about our family. Uncle Dave lived that out because he loved us. And I think every one of us in these last days heard him say, families first. Family is first. Don't forget your family. He said that the last time we were with him in the hospital, and I think everybody's heard him say that. He told us to love one another, and he loved us. So I would say to us, to honor his legacy and who this man was, let's continue to love one another. He brought the cousins together in a way that we never have been before, because we had to talk about the logistics of what was happening in his life, and we trusted Joey to keep us informed. And for the first time, we've got a group text where we're keeping up with each other and talking about what's happening and finding out more about his life. Submitting ourselves to that kind of love for each other, for our family. Love that bears all things and hopes all things and believes all things, which, according to the Bible, is the greatest and the best of everything. That's the most important thing of all, according to the Bible and according to Uncle Dave. And I think to honor his legacy well, his life, his love, and all of us, that's about the best that we can do. So, let's love one another. Let's honor the life that he lived. And yay, Uncle Dave. What a good man. Amen.
So I really didn't know I was supposed to talk till about 5 minutes ago.
Didn't I give you a text message?
Yeah, you did.
I probably didn't read it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, but I think that, I think Beth probably said most of it. But I think just sitting here, I think my first memory of Dave was, I don't know how old I was, but I was at Gom's house, and I found a hat. I found an army hat, and I had always known that Dad was in the Marines. And I remember asking Gomer, I was like, "Is this my dad's hat? Is this my dad's hat?" She's like, "No, that's your Uncle Dave's. That was your Uncle Dave's hat." And I don't remember where I found it, probably under the, you know, little toy area underneath the stove where she kept all this stuff. I don't know where I found it, but and I think I remember him, you know, coming up from South Carolina, and I think I don't know if I asked him if I could wear it or something, and I'm sure he just said some version of like, yeah, absolutely, you can. And I think for me, I think I just remember that kindness, you know. I mean, he didn't have to let me, you know, as a kid, you know, I was probably gonna sit on it or get it dirty, and I just remember him saying, no, you can, and I think that just that kindness that he showed when I was a kid, and you know, and there's in the Bible it says that, you know, that you know, we're all supposed to have these things that with God's Spirit living in us, we're supposed to have what they call the fruit of the Spirit, and I just know that one of the expressions of that fruit is kindness. And so I can just be so thankful that my uncle was a kind man. And when I came here 2 years ago and I brought my son here, he'd never been here, and trying to tell him about the house, and I remember like he and Dave just sitting in that room, and David just like turning his attention on Levi and just tell me about you, Levi. Just tell me about you, Levi. And just that kindness to my son. And I think the other thing that I just makes me think about this is one of the other things that Jesus says when he told his followers to go out, you know, and just tell people about what he's doing and what God's doing in the world. And he says, go look for a man of peace. He just go to a town and find a man of peace. And Dave was a complex person. And the truth is, we're all complex people. But I just love the fact that Jesus doesn't say, like, go find the pastors or go find the worship leaders or go find the church attenders. He says, go find a man of peace and go to that person's house and hang out there. And I think for what I knew of Dave, and even in his complexity and in his struggles, I think he was a man of peace. And I think that is something valid and it tells me something. And then I think the last thing that I would say is, I don't know, sister sent me an email, forwarded me an email last week, and you know, we're all tied together by this family name. I mean, some of us married into it, some of us are a generation removed from it. But I was just trying to think of like what it means to be a Case. You know, like Shana, my wife Shana is always saying the Case genes run so deep. Like, you know,
I say it nicer than
I know, but she's like, we always debate, you know, like whose genes, whose DNA is winning out in our kids.
We don't debate.
And I think we got it. But and there is some kind of strangeness, you know, that binds all of us cousins together. And there's somehow like we're all utterly unique, and yet there are these threads of a great appreciation of like all of life, you know. I think about like, you know, Garth, you and Andrew and George, and just like you know, in a way I almost feel like you guys are like the prototypical Cases. You know, you all were like athletes at some level, but you're all like Renaissance men. You know, you are all like you had some sort of involvement in the arts, and you all are passionate about doing life well and in your own way. And I think that, you know, Dave handed that off to us. And I mean, when you guys asked me, you know, okay, we want to do a song, and I was like, okay. And I don't know how much music was a part of our lives, but I know it was somehow a part of it. And I know that we all kind of just like soaked it up down at Pop and Gom's house, and some of those crazy sing-alongs, and then riding around the cars with my dad and everything. So, you know, I think that it's a pretty cool thing to have this DNA and this family running in through our veins and handing it off to our children. And just, I think Dave relished life, and he did it in his own way. And so I think it's cool to remember that. I think it's cool that we sing a really weird, quirky song that I've never heard before. But I'm like, I love this song. It's amazing. So I don't know when we want.
On that note,
Okay.
let's do it.
Brother,
This song is per request of my father, who I think felt it appropriate for his brother. And Joey and I discussed a little bit. I'm not sure about the theology of the song. It is a Jesus song. I'm not sure that it's strictly right, but it's close enough. And
It'll do.
yeah, so Eric, I guess Eric, you and I can do the verses.
Yep.
I have them here, and then we can all sing along, because you can, on the choruses, because
Yeah.
it's fine that they're not that hard.
And it starts with the chorus. The chorus is me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need anybody to tell us what it's all about.
Which sounds like Dave.
What's the title of the song?
Me and Jesus.
Me and Jesus.
Me and Jesus. Yes, if you want to Google the lyrics or look it up later and enjoy it. As sung by Tom T. Hall back in 1970. All right, brother.
Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need anybody to tell us what it's all about. I know a man who once was a sinner. I know a man who once was a drunk. I know a man who once was a loser. He went out one day and made an altar out of a stone.
Here we go.
Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need anybody to tell us what it's all about. Jesus brought me through all of my troubles. Jesus brought me through all of my trials. Jesus brought me through all of my heartaches. And I know that Jesus ain't gonna forsake me now. Everybody! Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need anybody to tell us what it's all about. We can't afford any fancy preaching.
neighbor, because Dave was a really great neighbor. And, you know, if you live long enough, you know that you suffer these losses, and you watch your own family, and you lose brothers, you lose friends, you lose neighbors. And, you know, I reflect on this poem by Howard Moss. It's called The Pruned Tree. There's a line in that poem that I've always thought it was just a real poignant thing that meant something to me about loss. And it says, "You're made more beautiful by losses." And I really think that means to me that we were made more beautiful. I was made more beautiful by Dave's presence on that porch, by him greeting me in the morning as I walked by, him greeting me in the afternoon, greeting my wife and me as we walked on exercise walks, Dave inviting us into his house to talk. He was one of those people that he believed that who you love in this journey is important. What you give in this journey is important. So I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to be here. And I just want to tell you, Dave meant something to this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say something. All right. I usually don't say too much, so I
Well,
don't
tell us
talk.
who you are.
I don't really talk on the internet or anything. So I try to say what I'm going to say if I feel it's important to everybody. So if I get emotional like Eric or Beth, don't, you know. But I'm George Ashley, G-A-G-O, whatever. I'm Garth's brother and Andrew's brother, George and Betty from Ohio, Pop and Gom's son, George, their son, the oldest son. I was the weird art kid. And if any of you are the weird art kids and your family, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I wasn't like Uncle Dave in some other regards, and you guys know what I'm talking about there too. The first thing, like Beth said, see, this is hard. It's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be his tailgate party, right? You're supposed to say, "Go Cox." The song, and I don't even know what made Uncle Clyde choose that song, but anybody that really took time, one, to get to overall to know Pop and Gom, and then the fruit that sprang from Pop and Gom in the form of Uncle Clyde, Uncle Jim, my dad, and Uncle Dave, knew what they instilled in them. And just like my own mom and dad, it was a mixed bag. Gom was somewhat artsy, and even though she wasn't really allowed to be, she had to be a tough farming woman, but she sang, and if anyone knows, Gom sang on the radio, and that was a regular thing for her. And Gom loved the arts, but she also loved athletics and stuff. And Pop was very hard-nosed, and you know, my dad got a little bit of that, so since I was a weird art child, it was frowned upon for me quite a bit to, oh, where's George at? Oh, he's off drawing or painting or singing, or oh, he's doing that Nancy Boy stuff or whatever. And so it was weird. But I got a late start on music, but I do pretty well at it. So you know, whatever, that's beside itself. But my point was the song, and anyone that knows Uncle Dave, I had a talk with Uncle Jim yesterday, and one of the things that Uncle Jim, am I allowed to talk about whatever, Uncle Jim?
As long as it's the truth.
It is. If it came from you, it's the truth, right? Uncle Jim said him and Uncle Dave had a little trouble, and this doesn't have any bearing on the fact that Uncle Jim loved Uncle Dave to no end, and Uncle Dave loved Uncle Jim to no end. And they're both just very loving people who often had different perspectives on life. And in many people's mind, and Beth spoke to me about this because my path to righteousness has often been kicked around, and watching my own mom die at a very young age, where faith not only became tainted but cursed. And that's probably the best way I could probably put it, Eric. But everybody has their own path. And Beth took, I don't know, Lord, 40 minutes or something, just talking to me down at the shop. Not preaching to me and not preaching at me. Just talking to me about me being me. And I thanked her probably about 5 times. Me, who never types anything on it, I hate that stuff, but it meant a lot, and it helped me put a lot of things that I already have a pretty decent perspective of myself. I know I can be a little rough and whatever I am and whatever anyone thinks of me, I really don't worry about it too much because I'm fine with myself. But I think Uncle Dave was ultimately fine with himself. And I think Uncle Dave struggled with that a lot. But Uncle Dave always exuded goodness and wellness unto others. And the reason I think that this song fits so well is because Uncle Dave does not have the traditional path to being saved or being anything else or the end result. He really doesn't. If anybody knows my family, my Aunt Nancy would be in the same boat. And she goes to church. She writes the church bulletin. She's wonderful. So when the song says, me and Jesus, we got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. We don't need anyone to tell us what it's all about. Those words hit home, and even to what Uncle Jim and I were talking about yesterday. And not even to go into what we were talking about. That was somewhat of a private conversation, and it, where it caused the rift was David was going to be David. You don't just, you could paint a turtle, but you wipe the paint off, it's still the way it was made. And so Uncle Dave was made one way, Uncle Jim made another. And whatever the Bible says or doesn't say, or whichever version you choose to follow, in the end, if you're a good Christian, the Bible always tells you to let God decide those things in the end. And when I listened to this song, what it made me think was Uncle Dave had his own relationship and in the way that he needed it to be. And he was a good man. And so if the end is that, what it is told to be, then God will sort that out and Uncle Dave will be where he's supposed to be. And I loved him, and I know you all loved him too. And Uncle Jim, I shared that, a little bit of that, because we talked about that, and that was something we actually could agree on in the end of that. And it was beautiful. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And I'm thankful that he took such good care of my brother there. He really did. He stepped up there. So, all right.
Well, I guess I'll talk next then. It was a good transition.
Yes, it was. Well planned.
All right, old folks. So, I think when I was a young boy, I met Dave on a couple occasions. I wouldn't say I was super close with him up until I actually moved here. And the way that, if you don't know, I think everybody here probably knows, I lived here with Uncle Dave for college. So I had a scholarship and I needed a college because they closed our ROTC program at Youngstown State, so I needed a place where I could get free room and board, to be honest. And so I mentioned it to Uncle Dave over the phone, and honestly, I didn't really know him that well at the time. I just knew of his family, you know, and to be honest, I quite take that for granted, that family. Yeah. So came down here for spring break and to look at the school and to talk to Uncle Dave about whether he wanted to have me. And he put me upstairs. He'd already built an apartment. It was very sweet.
Hey,
Very sweet. And, well, you know how close he was with the family, how much he cared. Even though he lived down here in South Carolina, a lot of people came to visit. And, as George mentioned, my mother died back in 1991, right? Was it 1990? 1990. And my dad, believe it or not, 14 years ago, died. Doesn't seem like that long ago, you know. So, seems we've had it easy for 14 years. And I have to say that I was okay with all of the dying. And this is a huge reminder. Haven't had much to say today. I've been very quiet. Because I just don't know what to say, but put together a couple thoughts. One time when I was here, I didn't have a lot of money, you know. I think ROTC gave us like $100 a month. We didn't really have much time to have a job, but I did work at Spaghetti Warehouse. And all my friends asked me to go to spring break in Florida, so I saved up probably $75. And I came down the steps because we were leaving at 5 a.m. And at the bottom of the steps, there was an envelope. And I just opened it up. There was a note that said, "Enjoy spring break." There was $150 cash. $150. That was huge back then. You know, I bought a lot of cases of beer. So we had a great time on spring break, and I'll never forget that. It was very sweet. You know, lots of tailgate parties. Lots of people talk about sitting out on the front porch having coffee. A lot of just quiet times, you know. A lot of sitting in the back there watching ball games, and both of us just fall asleep in the comfortable chairs back there. So, you know, a lot of times it doesn't have to be anything spectacular or amazing to be special. Just the time together, very special. Excuse me. But he was there for those special times. He was there for my graduation and my commissioning. All very special moments in my life. He was there for, we talked about this last month. While he was lying on his deathbed, I think we pretty much all knew that's where he was. Even though I'm not sure he had fully accepted that. He still had hope. And there was a glimmer for a little while. And we were talking about when my father died. And Uncle Jim, you were there, right? Dave was there. And a few of my dad's coaching and teacher friends were there. And they sang a Johnny Cash song. What was that song?
Circle.
The Circle.
Unbroken.
The Circle, yeah. And that was just really special. I didn't know the words except the chorus, and I just observed that. And we talked about that. Uncle Dave said, yeah, that was a very special moment. And one thing that he said that he asked Nadine, my dad's wife, after my mom passed away, he was remarried to Nadine, and he asked Nadine if she had any whiskey in the house. And Uncle Dave really wasn't much of a big drinker or anything like that. So they went and got a bottle, I think he said it was Wild Turkey or something, and brought it out and poured a glass for everybody. And I just remember Uncle Dave laying on his deathbed saying, he goes, and that was the best shot of whiskey I've ever had. And I'm just like, here's a guy laying on his deathbed. He's talking about being at somebody else's deathbed and what a great moment it was. And being there with Uncle Dave, and Joe, you made the right call. Thank you. So happy to be there. And for me. But I didn't really get to see Uncle Dave a lot. I joined the Army, I was in Korea, Colorado. I was never close, always far away. He came down to Florida one time to see, I think Marcus was born. I'm not sure if he saw Jenna when she was little, maybe once. So most of my contact with Dave for the last, 20 years was over the phone. I called him about once a week. Sometimes it would go a month or so, but sometimes it would be a couple times a week. And for the last 10 years or so, it was usually on my way home from work, because I wasn't busy then. I just call him and we talk, and just talk about just whatever, It was great, just great times. I do remember our little family message that the group text that we set up, and I was very touched by Joey's baby being born and then Dave dying the very next day. And you talked a little bit about the pruning of the tree, and that right there is, some more blossoms.
Yes.
Very sweet.
That's right.
But and Eric talked a little bit about the DNA or thread that runs through our family. I bet a little bit of that is probably mental illness.
It's true.
All right, so, I'm probably sure I have a little bit of that. I've run through some bouts of depression every now and then, especially being so far away. And sometimes feeling like I need somebody to call. I've probably called all of you at one point or another. But I called Dave the most. And right now, that's the hardest thing for me to handle. I'm sorry about making it about me right now. But every day right now, I just want to call them. So I hope you all pick up my call, because I only call a few people a lot. And I don't have him anymore, so just pick up the phone. That's all I have to say.
We will.
I just want to share a little bit. I'm a great niece. So, great nieces, yeah. But I think to be loved in this family is really just beautiful, and probably the best thing, just knowing that Uncle Dave said, family first, and that even when he knew he was leaving this earth, that's, what he focused on, and that I've always grown up, both sides of my family, knowing how important our family is, and getting to have a big family is a blessing and part of that, but knowing that Uncle Dave, who I've had to catch myself every time I've told, coworkers that I'm leaving, and I have to say, I'm my great uncle, because that's not, he's just my Uncle Dave, and he would call me occasionally and to say something or talk, and we hadn't seen him in a long time because he always wanted to get up to stuff and travel, but it was always tough for him to leave and come up, so it'd been a while, and then we'd, get little random Facebook comments so you guys probably know that his Facebook comments are random and weird sometimes and funny, and just the last time that he texted me or messaged me, I had cut my hair from real long to real short, and he said, he just messaged me and said, I'll miss that long hair, but you still look amazing. At first, I thought it was Katy Perry. So he just said that. And hair today, gone tomorrow. And he said, miles apart, but y'all remain in my heart, all of you. And so just such a wonderful family member, and meant a lot to me. And I think just hearing you guys talk, I didn't realize as much as I love my uncle and my aunt on this side and stuff that went, and when I became an aunt to my husband's sister's first son, I think that, realizing what that meant and having a responsibility as an aunt, and knowing that when I became an aunt to Sutton, knowing how much you love us, like, because then I felt that way, and you love us because you don't have, being he's not my blood, but I love them both so much, and that, knowing that you guys get to do that soon. So, like, I wish Uncle Dave, I didn't tell him, so, but I'm so glad that you guys will get to have that soon, and that, we have such a wonderful family relationship, and that my, the case in me is strong, and just, so love Uncle Dave, and I'm glad that I got to come and be here and celebrate him, because knowing that you are loved by someone, even when you don't get to see them, or even when you don't talk to them that much, but knowing how much he loved me and I loved him. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, and just miss knowing that he's just here. I think that's knowing that they're here, and knowing that they're gone is sad. So you don't have to clap. There's two. You can thank them.
It doesn't have to end, everybody.
Yeah.
Bathroom break.
Bathroom break.
All right, since I'll say something, if I can make it through a sentence during this.
Speak up.
Okay. I was just saying, it's hard for me to think of anything on this. I think I walked up to the playground to drop off the bucket and shovel to Victoria, and I was like, someone said something. I said, it's only hard if I think about it. So it's really hard to make it through any sentence discussing this. I have a hard time. And I'm the youngest, so yeah, I'm a sap, I guess. But I don't know. I try to include humor so it's not so rough on me. But so I'll say this as the only way to start this, because there's so many stories. You can just say stories forever, of which many you cannot say, because they're not the most appropriate stories to tell everybody. You can only tell certain people certain stories, or it's just, it's like, where did you grow up, or where did you live? So every story can't be repeated, but if you know them all, then that's awesome, So if you can share those secretly to the people you can tell those stories to, please tell them, because all those are good stories. That way the gossip stays alive, right? The gossip must keep going on. So, but, Kim, you told me not to mention this, just because he was going through pictures, and there Garth's got wedding pictures, and I said, I'm going to say this because you said not to say it, because I said, oh, good. I'll just show Victoria this picture because my ex-girlfriend's in it, and she has to deal with all my ex-girlfriends on Facebook. It's terrible. I don't know. I'm friends with them for some reason. I don't know what they're.
Yeah.
So, but it's funny when I heard that Uncle Dave, I got the call from Joe. This is horrible. I was like, I can't believe it. Because I talked to him just on New Year's, and he said he was having these problems, and we're like, but Jesus, have a good New Year, please. It was just, it just didn't sound right. And I really felt like, man, when I ended that call, I just said, this is not right. And I was like, man, I hope he's okay. It's just, to have a good New Year. And of course, this is the new year. It's not what I thought of or hoped of. But I always knew that he was having some rough times the last couple of years. And you don't think of it, but it happens, we all have a time limit at some point, and we never know when that's going to be. But anyways, back to my ex-girlfriends. So one of the people, like I heard this, and I actually called an ex-girlfriend. I talked. I think I told her. Maybe I didn't, but I actually called an ex-girlfriend, and she just started crying. You know, this ex-girlfriend started crying, and I'm crying. You know, and I'm like, gosh. But it's just funny because I think of this ex-girlfriend. She's in this picture. This other ex-girlfriend messaged me. She's like, I just read this about Uncle Dave. This other ex-girlfriend messaged me like, I'm so sorry about Uncle Dave. It's just funny because I'm late in the marriage game, you know. Thankfully, I met this wonderful woman.
There you go.
And he loved Victoria, you know. Thank goodness, you know. I found the right one.
Yes.
And she's musical because I can't play or sing anything. So I'm out on that side part of this family, but I can't. I fake instrument noises. That's why I tell Victoria I can play in the orchestra. I just make sounds. But anyways, all these ex-girlfriends are messaging me how they loved Uncle Dave. He was so awesome, and they loved his stories. And it's like all this. I don't know, how old was I when I got married? 30-something, whatever. But you know, all these people are just somehow they've all been part of Uncle Dave's life because Uncle Dave welcomed everybody you brought. It didn't matter where they were from or who they were. Everybody was welcome, and every girlfriend was welcome, and he affected every one of those people that met him because he was who he was. When somebody welcomes you so well, you're so thankful, and you remember that, and you're friends with that person forever. And he was everybody's friend, and everybody that that he came in contact with. Although he would gossip, you know, when you're not that person, you're the person being gossiped. You always wonder that. Victoria said, I wonder if he gossips about us when we're not here. Yeah, you don't know that answer.
He did talk to his ex-girlfriends.
They're not so memorable after all.
Clearly.
So, but anyway, I was kind of touched. Those people are messaging me like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry," because like, "Oh my gosh, how do I tell Victoria all these ex-girlfriends are messaging me?" But kind of fun. She knows that anyway. It's ridiculous, but that's all right. I'm married, so it's too bad for them. But anyways, again, I can't. Every time I think about it, I think all his stories are just legendary, and you know, I think his legend lives on with every one of us as we share memories and get together. And he always said, you know, make sure, no matter what, you know, I know George and Garth and I, we all don't talk that much. Sometimes Garth and I will talk more. George doesn't talk to me for more. Garth, whatever, it's our own thing. But he's just like, it doesn't matter. You've got to look past anything. You've got to talk to each other because somehow you've got to stick together. It's the family must stick together. And I know it's so hard to plan anything that we come together. And of course, you know, it's always a big joke. And I think in anybody's family, you know, there's always one way to get together. You know, and he said it to, you know, Uncle Clyde actually said that to him on the phone when we were sitting in the hospital. He said, "You picked one hell of a way to get the family all together," you know, and it seems like that's always the way, and we joke about it, and I wish there was a way we could all get together in a more positive setting, and others can be positive, but, you know, it's hard when somebody's removed from that circle that'd be the only time, and everybody's busy. It's the way the world works these days, but even the group text, it is refreshing to just talk to like a number of relatives. It's just funny, you get that group text, I'm like, I don't even know half the numbers on this thing, and I'm like, oh, these are all family members. Like, I don't know you people. Like, so it is nice to talk to people, but it's to get together and just you know, we all have so many stories, and we sat down with every one of us at some point and told a story or gossiped, and sometimes you just listen, just like he listened to you, and he'd just go on and on. You're like, whew, like where did all that come from, you know? And all those are special moments that we all had with Uncle Dave, and you know, and I'm just so thankful that he got to meet Elliot. That's really big to me.
wait, Andrew's not
He
done
just
yet.
said,
Wait, he's not done yet.
Done
So give him a minute.
yeah, I'm taking a long time, sorry. But, just, I wanted to take pictures because I need him to know, he didn't, Elliot never got to meet my dad, and I know Marcus got to meet Dad, but never really knew him, and it's the way I felt about Uncle Dave, and you're right, Garth, it's been a long time since a death, a passing, it's just like, wow, this is, Uncle Jim, you're his brother, you're my dad's brother, you're Uncle Dave's brother, and Uncle Clyde, you're brother, and it's a huge deal to us, and we love you guys, and we all need to stick together and love each other for sure. It's just so important to me that we brought Elliot a couple times, and that he got to know him, and every time you end the call with him, it's like, give my love to Victoria, give my love to Elliot, and sure thing, and it was easy to say, I love you, Uncle Dave, because we don't say that all the time to each other, and I don't always say, I love you, Garth, or I love you, George, but sometimes we do, and it's like, he always, no problem ending a call like that, because it's so easy for him to say that. One of the things that was, he always felt I got the short end of the stick with my mom and dad passing, because I've always been the youngest, and he told me, my dad said, he goes, with things were the way they were, and he said, he told Uncle Dave to make sure I was okay, because this was when my dad was sick, and I feel that I've done well and all that stuff, but when he was sick, I didn't want to come down because, Joe mentioned, I was like, I felt I don't want to come down because it's not Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave is way more dynamic than laying in a bed, and I was like, Victoria's like, you need to go, and I'm like, nah, I just can't go, and she's like, I think you should go. Garth's going, okay, I'm going, and it was the best thing I ever did. I had to go, and I had to come down because I wanted to let him know that I would be okay, because I would never want him to think that he failed, because he was given some mission by my dad, and I felt like I needed to reassure him that it's okay, even for him to go, because he's fighting this fight and it's tough, and everything's going to be okay no matter what happens, and that was important to me. I didn't want to say bye, but it was nice just to see Uncle Dave, because he, even though in that bed there were great moments of just Uncle Dave and the things he said, and I'm like, that's so funny. After talking with a little bit, you get some Uncle Dave, even in those last moments, and it was so important that I came down for that, and it's just, this whole state to me represents Uncle Dave. If I think South Carolina, I think Uncle Dave. And it's like the Gamecocks are on. I'm like, I like the Gamecocks. I know my brother went there, but he went there because Uncle Dave is a state. He's all in South Carolina. And we have family down here, but I don't know if anybody'd be here if Uncle Dave didn't come here in the first place. It's just what I think about when I come down here. He just represents part of the United States of America. It's weird to think about. But I've just developed memories of coming down here because of this person, and it's broadened my life and my horizon, and I'm thankful for him knowing me my entire life. It's crazy to think that, but that's reality. So I don't know, lots of other stories if you want to talk on the down low. I got a lot more. Don't repeat them all, but I got some good ones. If you tell me yours. So thank you all for this time. That's it.
Okay, now's your turn. Talk loud. Clear your throat.
You guys are generally the guys that talk the most. Jim and I, man, and my brother Jim. But I'm the oldest. Jim's next to me. unfortunate today. And thanks to Jim and my brother. And when they passed away, that's all I'm saying. The two youngest are gone, and the children are
He said
They're too young.
that it just wasn't right that the two youngest ones were.
That's all.
I know one thing about David. He loved his mother. Of all things, he loved his mother. And it's wonderful to see that in any man.
One of the best stories was when Gone ran away from home. If you can hear Uncle Dave tell that story about her looping clock and running away and coming down here. That was a good one. I'll say no more, but that was.
Walk through the woods. Big almost. You dumb son of a bitch. There's no other way to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, there he is.
Hey, buddy, you come for the story too?
Somebody broke down on the highway?
We know what can hear you. Who you throw? Talk about it.
Been doing that. They go in the corner. Get the bridge. And right well. And the boy highway. And pop there. Up there. Every damn time I could, everything. Over there. One of the same place where I started. When I started. And the golf cart, big golf.
Don't be saying what he said. This is about David. Somebody must be just thinking.
That's just another story, not a Dave story, but when Gomer ran over Pop with a golf cart. Also lines right up with the family history.
I remember it well.
I wanted to add to the time, particularly the last, I think, 2 or 3 years, every time I talk to Dave, he would say, I just don't want to do without Joe and Kim. And I just want to thank you guys both for serving him with such love. It never failed. It never failed. He thought you were a saint, Kim, and I knew you were. So thank you.
She was.
Thank you.
Appointments, how many? More than you can count, I'm sure. Joe was here anytime he called.
No, not just often. He was locked out of his truck. I'll just share this because there's some of the stories make me cry too. So, but and this actually ended up probably a bad situation for Dave and I. He was down in 5 Points and had his truck, and he went to pay a bill, I think, which I used to get mad at him for going to pay his bill. Like, why don't you just put a check in the mail and just mail the bill in? Or call on the phone and pay her the phone. He's like, no, I like to go pay. And sometimes he'd make me come over here and he'd drive me and I'd have to go pay the bill. But he had driven down to 5 Points and got out of his truck, locked his truck, went in to pay his cable bill, and come out, and his truck wouldn't unlock. Put the key in, couldn't get the door to unlock. And he'd been having trouble with the door unlocking. So he called me. I was at work, and he's like, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm working." He said, "I need you to come get me." I said, "My truck's locked. The door won't unlock. The battery's dead or something." I said, "Well, even if the battery's dead, the door would still unlock." He's like, "I don't know what's wrong." He said, "I can't even, the door won't unlock." And I said, "Dave, I'm in Greenville." I said, "It'll take me." I said, "I can get there in about 2 hours." And I said, I could call. And I said, "Hold on, let me call Kim and see where she's at." Well, she was over picking the grandkids up from school. So she was in car line, they call it. You get up to get a car line an hour before the school lets the kids out. And so she was like 15 minutes or 30 minutes before the kids were going to go to school. So she couldn't leave there and get to 5 Points. I said, "Kim will be there. It's going to be about an hour before she can get there." He's like, "Well, all right." So anyways, I don't know if he called you back. I think he called me back, and Clint, the guy that does some work around here, he got a hold of Clint, and Clint came and got him. And he got the car unlocked, and the car train got his truck back home. So not long after that, I said, "Dave," I said, "You need to get you a smartphone." I said, "I'm going to put on there Find Friends, and I want you to be able to see where I'm at, or I can see where you're at." I said, "Where are you at?" He said, "I'm in 5 Points." I said, "Where are you parked at?" He's like, "I was out here by the, I didn't even know where he was, and I couldn't have said." Kim, she's like, "Where is he?" And I said, "Somewhere in 5 Points." And I said, "So we're going to use your smartphone." So, because I wanted him to know where I was. I showed him where you could use Find Friends. And what he took that to mean was that he was not supposed to call me. That I did not want him calling me and asking me questions when I'm in Greenville and I'm at work. He's not supposed to call me. Because I'd gotten him the smartphone and gave him the smartphone, and I don't know if he ever called me one time on the smartphone. But I learned from Kim, she usually would tell me what I did wrong regarding David's kids. She would, because there was multiple times I did things that were, I was probably the most offensive when it came to, but I thought the smartphone was going to be a good thing. I'd gotten my dad a smartphone, and we've had a good time with text messages and stuff like that. But David did not want a text message. He didn't want a smartphone. He hated the smartphone. The battery was dead
I think
too
the
often.
last message on my phone from him says, "I hate this phone."
He hated the smartphone. He really did. It was not a smart idea, but to get Dave a smartphone. I really think he would have eventually come around to my way of thinking. He didn't want the internet. He didn't want his laptop, but he did want Facebook. A lot of the things that he did, I think, like a little bit. We got him. But it was, even his TV, he didn't want a bigger TV. I made him get a bigger TV. Made him get a lot of things that he didn't want to get. But,
Well, I want to tell one. I stay in South Carolina most of the time. In the summers, I have to go to Pennsylvania. But Jim goes back and forth. Well, he had just gone home to Pennsylvania when David broke his hip. Well, he didn't have that smartphone. It was somewhere in the house. He pulled the landline down, called call Jim
In Franklin.
Franklin. And Jim said, I'm in Pennsylvania, what can I do? He said, well, call Joe. He said, let me call 911. No, call Joe or Jim. And then he did. Mary and I were at church, and we were meeting them after church. Mary was in, because they're the youth leaders, was in to find out where we're going after church to have supper. The lady in there says, oh, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your mother and dad are gone. Your uncle,
Fell and broke his hip.
yeah. Mary come out and she said, I'm sorry to tell you. Well, Mary said, don't be sorry. Thank you for telling me. He called Clear Defense. It was the only number he could remember.
Wow.
Because pushing that button, that's all you do.
Wow.
You don't remember a number. Like we used to years ago.
Grandma's moral of the story.
723.
Right.
Don't miss my
Know it forever.
You
437-5684.
If you call,
That's
you
Gomes.
ask or Jim to call your mother
Or
or your kids.
Those are the only enough phone numbers I remember.
Well, we had 23723. That's all we lied about.
You're right. Like, imagine who called Clear Defense. Oh, that was, but he didn't want anybody else but Joe and Jim.
That's the second time we had to break in.
Yeah.
And that was only a few days later, wasn't it?
About a couple weeks. Yeah, probably in the middle of December, he had the sugar draw, called diabetic coma, and then a few weeks after that, he fell, broke his hip.
But he had the smartphone then, didn't he?
He did, but it was on the other end of the bedroom. And the,
Well, how'd you know?
no, because he called Dad, and Dad called me, or called Kim.
Well, how'd you know when the,
Oh, he was laying in the bed and
with
called.
the phone?
I think he had his other,
Yeah.
the landline phone still. He
Oh,
called.
he did.
Yeah, he called our house. He might have used the smartphone that night, I don't remember, what number he called on. But yeah, he called, he came over and broke in that night, and then we come back and broke in again, same one.
So,
Gee, Eric, aren't we gonna do one more song?
well,
Yeah.
I was gonna, I didn't really know if I was gonna share this or not, but so many people have said so many things that, it's funny, I laughed when you said, the whole thing about like mental illness, and, I definitely struggle with depression as well, and the thing is, like, as I got older, I don't know at what point, like, this is where, like, I think, George Ashley and I are closest in age out of all, I'm closest to him in age out of all the cousins, Joe used to pick on me, Joe and my sister and Jimmy used to pick on me all the time, but.
Your dad pays to do that.
But I think at some point, I mean, like, and I'm a grown man with kids of my own, but music can still, I can say things through music that I can't say, and I can't always express. And I'm grateful for that, because I think I would have been even more crazy that if I hadn't had some way to get it out. And so I'll tell more about the song in a second, but I want to, like Andrew said something like, it was weird, the night he passed, I laid down in bed and as I laid down, I just felt in my spirit, I was like, your uncle's gonna pass tonight. So it was weird because I just knew it. And I felt it too. Yeah, and I, woke up. I'd been having a lot of trouble sleeping for a year, really years. And so I would usually wake up in the middle of the night, but I don't usually check my phone like to look at messages. And I checked my phone, and then I saw you had just texted, and it was just like, and it was just weird, the spiritual part of this. But this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but this is just, I started writing a song probably 2002, and it was a song that I did not want to write. I wanted to write it, but I didn't want to write it. And it was a song about this type of situation. And it's gonna sound a little bit morbid, but I was just trying to think about what's gonna happen when my parents pass. And I was sitting there going like, I know they're gonna want to be buried in North Carolina. And I was like, and so I just wrote, so that I was just driving around and I was right, and I just wrote, Carolina, don't you call my name. I don't want to hear it. And so I had been, and I put it aside, and I finally got to working on it and finished it, and it's supposed to, I'm trying to finish this record for May, but I never thought about South Carolina. So when you're talking about like, you know, South Carolina is Dave and everything, and because I just called it Carolina, you know, and then I'm like, oh crap, I forgot there's two. So I'm just gonna sing it. I'm gonna try to sing it, and it's not about me, but I think it's just, you know, it's tough times, and but it's good that we're here, and we have to be here. And sorrow does make us better. And there's hope, right?
Yes.
Like my spiritual mentor, he's always like, he always looks at me and he goes, this is either true or it's not. True or it's not. It's either the end or it's not. And I believe it's not the end.
Amen.
So it's hard, but it's not the end. So anyway, I'm just going to share, and this is not about me, but it just seemed like it was appropriate. I'm not going to tune the whole lot better than that. Carolina, don't you call my name. I know I'm never going to be the same. Carolina, don't you bring me back till the sun don't shine and the moon turns black. 'Cause I don't really want to know at this time. Carolina, don't you say a word. You're saying nothing that I haven't already heard. Carolina, don't you sing that song. Just pack your things and move along to your crooked coastal plain and the pines. 'Cause I don't want to go. 'Cause I don't want to go. Oh no, say goodbye. Carolina, don't you ring that bell. You got something to say, you just go to hell. Carolina, don't you make a sound till they lay my body in the lonely ground. Till they lay my body in the lonely ground. 'Cause I don't want to go. 'Cause I don't want to go. Oh no, say
struggle to get very emotional.
You never know who next one might be.
You never know. Well, life, that's the way life is.
I don't think Joe finished talking. I think you were still saying stuff.
Did you have something else to say?
And I'll listen
Well,
all
I'll tell
night
you.
long. Go ahead and talk.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I
But I think
echo.
I don't think you finished talking.
What,
You were
Beth?
still, you done?
He's well,
Because if you got more, I'd love to hear.
I would echo, that's all Uncle Jim and Aunt Kate would say. They'd say, Joe, Kim, and Gail would basically always be over here looking out for the last 10 years for Uncle Dave. And it's you know, everybody was sitting here talking about that, and I'm thinking, I'm sitting here and I'm going, man, I wish I would have said something. And understand Joe. Joe doesn't live his life to be thanked or oh wow, I need some praise. He's not like that. But I sure wish I could thank Joe. I better say thanks to him as when we're done here, since I didn't say it when my dumb butt was speaking, you know. And then Beth said it, and so yeah, I mean, I hope everybody realizes how much he's done to extend Uncle Dave's life in the first place. And you know, bless Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim tried to get him to, you know, hey, Uncle Dave, let's go. You got to walk to the store. You got to do this. Get your heart. Uncle Dave didn't have the same ideas on health benefits of the heart as we do. You know, Krispy Kreme may get your heart rate going, but for a different reason. But yeah, you guys, you know, did a thankless and a thankful job wrapped up into one. And I mean, and these guys all got this house ready for Garth and Andrew and I to take the estate tour last night of the fallen Confederate veterans. That's what it felt like. You were coming into a museum almost. You know, I think we took about an hour just walking around in the house before we sat down and started looking at the yearbooks and stuff. And but yeah, I'm sure Beth and myself, I'm sure we speak for everybody. And Eric, what a beautiful song.
Very nice.
Wonderful. Yeah, just and that you did what Uncle Dave wished here. I mean, in a sense, this is the most beautiful. My mother had a non-traditional one too. You know, this is the most beautiful thing you could do for somebody, to do what their idea of their funeral or their passing or their brief shining light in the sun, which all of our lives are. They're just really a blip on the radar screen. You know, we don't get very long to make it done, not just as he wished, but probably even more so. I mean, and it's like neighbors came over and, you know, look at this. This is something else. And
This is what he ordered.
well, I get it, but I mean,
Good call.
you know,
Did he say how to
it's how it should be done.
Well, he didn't. He didn't tell us what to prepare.
He said to
Hey,
keep the
did not
family
say
together
I
and
have a
keep
question
going.
while we're all here. Did he tell you what he wanted done with his ashes? Did he express
He
his
did. So we've got a plan for that. That's a good question. So he's decided to be buried in Nicklin Methodist Church.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yep. And my dad has agreed to, he's got a, there was actually a, and maybe I should, so beside Mom and Pop, he's gonna bury the ashes there. And Dave requested that also George and Betty's name be listed on the marker, because they really didn't have a marker anywhere. And so, and Andrew has ashes of them as well that are going to be buried with Dave, George, and Betty, and there'll be a marker placed on beside Mom and Pop at Nicklin Methodist Church. And my dad's agreed to get all that worked out.
That's awesome.
That's
Thank
nice.
you.
Yeah, we never really had a place
Yeah,
to
you're
go.
just.
Well, my mom and dad's ashes, for the most part, are in Nicklin, right behind the cornfields. If you go in those woods, and that's where they wanted them to be. Because we used to camp out there every summer until Gom said there was a bear back there. Yeah, right. You know, we don't want to camp with the bear.
And
Even in that,
He said, no, you can't
Dave's
believe
bringing
it.
family together.
Oh,
That's right.
That's right, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
yeah. I mean, that's quite an end statement. I mean, that's just beautiful, and thanks for making that happen. I mean, you guys have been wonderful.
great.
When this
You
starts
know,
to
we
wrap
still
up,
have Aunt Kay
we need
with
to
us.
get a
Don't
photograph.
forget
Oh,
Aunt
yeah,
Kay.
take a
The
picture
family.
You weren't doing so well last year, and look at you now. So, you know, very blessed.
And the prayers I've had, and the doctors I've had. I'm just very blessed.
Good family, really. is.
Now I have to make it till August. Wedding.
Yeah.
Wedding.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't wanna miss that.
Not to be confused with
the No. girl in the
middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, on me. Put your hand up. Put your hand up.
Those two.
Well, how about, can we wrap it up with a prayer?
Sure.
Can I play this before? This is something, and maybe it's a good thing to do or not, but I just thought it was funny. Because and maybe some other people have them, but voicemails on your cell phone.
Oh, boy.
And I had other ones, but this one, it was just interesting to me because Beth, it actually has something indirectly to do with you because David, it has everything to do with you because, again, he always cared so much to make sure everybody was okay. And it's not a long voicemail, it was just really quick, but I was at work. And I thought it was funny because I texted him back. And, but, I don't know.
Dude, how far are you from Kent State? In what city is Kent State in?
And I thought,
Okay, fine.
I texted him back, I said, Kent isn't Kent. It's a city. But I said, I'm 4.5 hours an hour from Youngstown, but, you know, David, it's just, again, he was, I did call him back eventually, and he said, because he wants to make sure that, you know, you're away from home, and he wants to make sure that, you know, you're close to George, or if I was close to you, and he was always thinking about making sure that we always have a place to go in family, and that we're sticking together, and you always have family, and everybody in here should know that. There's family somewhere for you, and if you're ever lost or in doubt, you know, we have a great family. And you know, I'm sure somebody else got some voicemails or something. It's like, you know, those are so hard to. You can't hit the delete button on that. It seems like you never can. And Beth, I think I called you last year about a voicemail when Victoria and I went through something. I can't delete that voicemail, and it's hard. So, but you know, stick together. That's what he wanted.
Beth, you're on.
Let's pray. We're having an amoeba.
I'll break my hand.
Hit my burn.
And before we pray, just look around. And babies and old people and everything in between. And we're all connected in ways that we don't get to say for anybody else or anything else in this world. And we don't all know each other really well, but we are connected, and that matters. And we're here because the guy who lived here knew how much that mattered. Let's pray. God, first and foremost, we humbly gather and admit that there is something bigger in this world than us. Always has been, always will be. And represented in this circle here is a tremendous amount of loss and pain, a lot of doubt, a lot of questionings, a lot of suffering, a lot of paths that have been quite zigzaggy. But through it all, you remain. You have always been, you always will be. And we are not granted lives that are free of suffering, we know that. But deep in our hearts, we long to be content. We'd rather be happy. We'd rather have a life of ease. We would rather have what we want. And it is tough when we have to submit to what is the ultimate reality, that none of us gets to stay here forever, and that none of us gets to escape suffering and pain and loss. So in that, admitting that and owning that together, we can stand here and first and foremost thank you that we experienced life with David Henry Case. That he blessed and touched each one of us, and in spite of the challenges of his life, the ups and downs, and we only talked about the good stuff today, but there was some tough stuff too. But he lived, was granted life by you, and he passed over into eternity. And we've all been impacted by that. So we thank you for creating Uncle Dave, Brother Dave, Friend Dave, Neighbor Dave, a man who had a great impact on his community and on his family. We thank you. And now I pray, God, for each of us here that we have learned much from this time together, that we will remember that you have something for us, through us, and that we might seek to find that and honor the love that you plant inside of us. Every one of us is on a different spiritual journey. We're all making our own way, but ultimately we submit to all that you might have for us. May we help one another. May we pick up the phone when it rings. May we make the extra effort to stop and visit a while. And may we always remember that of faith, hope, and love, the greatest is love. And that we are called to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, but also to love our neighbors and our cousins and our brothers and our nieces and our nephews and our aunts and our grandparents and our grandchildren and our second cousins and our... We are called to love. Thank you for reminding of us, reminding us of that today, God, in such a powerful way. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. And we don't have to leave or anything like that. I did want to say that, and I think y'all have mentioned certain things. That Dave, basically, he gave his house to Kim and I. That was what he did. This didn't happen last week. This happened, 6 years ago. And he said that, but he has the contents of the house. Basically, he had in his will that he could have designated different people get different things. But he never did that. He told me all the time different things he planned to do, wanted to do, but he never wrote that down. Now, and I really, if there's anything, I know we talked to some of different people that's like, well, this, and I know the jukebox, we talked to Beth about that. There's several members of her family that he gave the jukebox to. And there were several other items that I've learned that he gave to multiple people. And so I think he just did that to confuse things. But whatever, really I shouldn't say whatever, if anything that anybody would like that he has, I would like you to have it. Anything that's not, we're probably going to sell, and there is in his will for any of his things that no one would like, we'll sell. Each of the nieces and nephews, we'll divide all those equally amongst the one niece and the nephews of that generation. But he didn't want his stuff sold. He really didn't. And he would have, and he was so thankful, because I told him multiple times when he would be talking about, this big house and all the taxes. I said, Dave, if you want to sell the house, I said, let's sell the house, buy another small place, just easy for you to take care of. The Yardleys, no, this is where he loved to live. And I think and I learned the more I learned that he didn't want to leave here. I think he would have rather had the house fall in on him than to have sold and moved out of here. He would have probably lived somewhere else but he didn't want anybody else living here either. That wasn't a goal either, unless maybe it was somebody like Garth or a family member that got to stay with him. He was grateful for that. But so I don't know, and I know some of y'all mentioned some things. I know there's a clock in the hallway that he did ask Andrew to take, and Andrew and I have talked about that. There's this clock here he gave to my son Joey. as something he wanted him to have, and I told him, and he knew that, Joey knew that. I told David, we only have one David in the family, so I wanted David to have that particular item. But other things, I mean, if it's tables or couches or pictures, Clyde and I talked about some things, and the house is not something that Kim and I plan to move into. We really like it in the other side of the river. I couldn't even get my fleet of cars here. And I told the neighbors, I said, we're really just gonna sell the house. That's gonna be our goal, is to just, to sell the house. I don't know, what or how we'll work all that out. I'd like to find them a good neighbor. And I talked to several of the neighbors. I told them, they were hoping it wasn't gonna become, university rental property. And I don't think, whoever buys it after that, if they do that, I mean, that's, shame on them. That's not what David would have wanted. He would want somebody to live here to be a good neighbor, and so I told them I'll do the best I can to get them a good neighbor. And if they know a good neighbor that they'd like to be their neighbor, to give me their name, and we'll talk to that person. But, I mean, there's so many things that meant a lot to him. I know some of the artwork isn't anybody's style that I know. There's some of the pictures that are maybe offensive to some people. Some people find that to be artistic, and that's okay too. I'm not, trying to things that are just.
You need to look at the waterfall picture with the naked woman. Just
where is it?
Kind of excited that she's in front of a waterfall. Right? Yeah, there you go.
So that was a peculiar thing.
Didn't you put that away? I
It
told
is
you
put
to
away,
put
yes.
that away. These little kids come in here. These young innocent boys.
Innocent boys?
She's looking at you.
Hilarious.
But then that's, I think y'all have talked about some things. I know some for George and Andrew, some of the stuff your dad made or your mother made. And if you have some of the stuff, that's good. If you have, even maybe a bigger reason to have it, maybe it's some family photos that you didn't realize existed that you would take and treasure. If your goal is, I think I can get the best money out of this, I hope that's not your motive. If it is, that's okay too. But I really think Dave, these were he treasured everything he had, I think. At least he oftentimes said, well, I want you to have this, but don't take it now. There's a, what's that?
I said Beth knows that.
Yeah. And so if there is anything, and we don't have to, like I said, the party doesn't need to end, we need to eat 2 more meals here. And if you want to take food with you when you leave, that's fine too. But I think we would, I just didn't want to not say that as we, kind of gathering around. And if you want to, I think you walked through the house. There's a few things that, and there was some stuff that he had that we did throw away. There was a basement full of stuff we all, Greg's not here now, but he worked in the basement all day, one day, hauling trash out of the basement. And I'm grateful for his help on that one.
Joe, you said there was a will you were gonna read?
I wasn't gonna, but I've got the will if you'd like to read it. And I did, because it's really kind of, it's one of the legal documents. It's not like a poetic will, but I did bring that so that you can see what he had and how it was defined out in there.